Good morning, everyone. David Severance here. Nice to see you this morning. Welcome to Leadership Matters. For those of you who are new here, welcome. We opened up today's call to a few more folks who are clients. So if you're on here for the first time, welcome. My name is David Severance. I'm the Chief Learning Officer here at Chirag Shah Coaching. These Wednesday morning calls are focused on leadership, focused on how you lead yourself every day in your business and your life. And if you lead a team, how you lead the team. So a variety of topics that we cover, from how you think, how you can think, how you should think to set yourself up for success, together with lots of tactics and other things on how to interact with people, how to lead people, how to communicate, a whole bunch of stuff. For those of you who don't know me, I got to know Chirag in 2017 when he was admitted to my leadership program. I run a year-long leadership program in New York for 20 people every year. We take people from all walks of life, professionals, academics, architects, all kinds of folks, and put them together for a year, help them get clearer about how they can understand what it is they want in their life, why they want it, how they can get there. So it's a very intensive experience, and Chirag went through that experience with me in 2017, graduated in 2018. Since that time, we've been talking together, obviously, and when he decided to start this business in 2020, he said, David, please help me with this. I know these people can use a lot of your stuff. And I said, fine. So since we started in 2020, as the rest of the world shut down, we were opening up. And since then, we've been doing, obviously, coaching many of you individually, doing these calls, of course, and he and I co-facilitate the $1 Million Mastermind groups that we run. So welcome, everyone. I call these programs Leadership Matters because I believe that leadership matters. The ultimate success that you experience in your job and in your life is a reflection of how you lead yourself and how you lead others around you. Essentially, that's a function of how well you connect with other human beings and how well you influence them. So one way to think about these calls is they're all about how to connect more deeply and influence more positively. So today we're going to focus on the topic of influence. For those of you who were on Chirag's call yesterday, you heard him talk about the Med-C. Med-C is a simple framework that we created in 2020 when we first started talking about how to help agents connect with people. And he also mentioned the word trust. These kinds of things are emblematic of what we're going to talk about today in terms of influence. How do you influence another? And what's the kind of principle that we can keep in mind around this? So this is the first of 10 calls that I'm going to be doing between now and the end of the year. Each one will be focused on a single principle. And as you think through these principles and as you act on them consistently in your work, it's going to transform your ability to connect with the people that you work with, not just the clients that you want to serve, but people you work with, even agents, other agents, but certainly people on your teams if you have a team, vendors that you work with, and anyone in your life. These calls will be spaced out over the next 20 calls or so. So not every call that I do in series will be one of these 10 principles. So I suggest that everyone who takes notes, create a separate page of notes with just 10 blank lines on it. And as we do these calls over the next 20 or 25 calls, when we get to that particular next one, we'll talk about it and you can just fill in that particular blank. And when you get to the end and you look at all of those 10 principles, you'll see that they all do greatly affect your potential success. And if there are any of them that you're not practicing at all or not practicing consistently or effectively, there's an opportunity to grow yourself and the success of your business there. So I'm going to share a couple of slides and then we're going to come back and talk a little bit about it. So my intention here is that you will take something out of each of these principle calls that is something that you can relate to how you work with people and how you interact with people every day. So the topic of this first one is influence. That's not the principle, so don't write that down on the first of your 10 lines. That's just the topic. We're going to get to the principle itself on slide 6 or 7 of this deck after I take you through a couple other things. But keep in mind what Chirag said yesterday about the Med-C and the importance of trust. You may remember him having a conversation with Rob in demonstrating the Med-C and the deep connection that he's able to establish with someone, even in a kind of a role play scenario. There's a way for us to connect with others, and that's what we're talking about here, is influence. So let me pull up the slide deck. We'll talk it through. First, let me ask one question before I do that. Please put into the chat, Where do you sometimes stumble in your ability to affect somebody else the way you would like to, like pitching effectively or talking a seller down from an unrealistic price in today's marketplace, or working with a buyer who just thinks that some kind of a great deal is out there when it really isn't? Or maybe if you lead a team and you're having trouble managing the performance of some of your team members, getting them to do what you want them to do. Where do you struggle in influencing others effectively? Just put one place, in the chat. Let's see what we've got. Because theoretically, if you influence everybody the way that you're intending, there's no need for you to be here at CSC. Right? You've won every single pitch you've ever done. Everybody loves you who works for you, and they do exactly what you want all the time. Your spouse does exactly what you want all the time. Your kids do exactly what you want all the time. You've influenced everyone in your life perfectly. I see a couple things here. All of the above, buyer getting that deal, influencing the team to be consistent on coaching. Sure, that's a real challenge, certainly, Melissa. Getting buyers to take action and offer reasonable prices, yes. List price and prepping, yes. Trying to not come off too strong or pushing, okay, we'll talk about that. Buyer wanting to wait until rates go down, got it. So these are all perfectly good examples of where we would seek to influence someone. If we had an ideal situation, we would be able to influence them in this direction or that direction. But of course, it's not always easy. In fact, if we look at our batting average, how many times you tried to influence somebody in the last month or year of your life and how successful you are, we may all be batting 200 or 300 or 400 or 500, but it's not enough, right? If we feel that the outcome is valuable enough to actually try in the first place, then every time we fail to get our intended impact, then we failed in something that was important to us, whether it's business oriented or personal. Okay, got it. So those are all good examples. Let's pull up a few slides and think about this topic of influence a little bit. Okay. First question to think about here, and it's not just a simple dumb question, but it's something we need to think about. What is the influence? When we seek to influence someone, whether it's a potential client that we're pitching, whether it's a client that we're in the middle of some kind of a conversation over pricing or how to prep the house or something like that, what are we actually trying to do here? Well, you can think of influence in terms of two things potentially happening. One is the ability to move another's mind or affect another's behavior. What we're talking about is establishing a connection in the other person's mind that's so powerful that they are actually moved mentally, or their action is influenced by something you say or you do or how you do it. And this is where tools like the Med-C can come in. We'll talk more about that in just a moment. So when we're talking about influence, what we're talking about is this kind of amazing power that we can harness sometimes as human beings to move another person's thinking in a different direction or to a different place, or to affect the actual choice that they make to behave in one way or to take one action versus another action. Of course, that's what selling is all about. At the very core, selling is about influencing, let's say. It's about affecting a mind or affecting a behavior. So how do we do this well? What's involved with that? Let's talk a little more about that. How important does influence matter? How important is it to you and your success? Well, it matters in all these cases. When you're pitching a client, when you're talking with sellers about prices, when you're talking with buyers, when you're negotiating with another agent, if you're working with a vendor and you want them to give you a special deal on some swag, or you're having an event and you want some kind of a discount or something like that. How about negotiating your split with a Compass? How many of you are 100% happy with your split with Compass? If you are, great, you did a great job influencing them there. If not, then maybe there's an opportunity for you to do it better next time. Managing the performance of your team members. A few people said that in the chat a moment ago. And of course, how about bringing a great person onto your team, whether they're an agent or anybody? How do you influence them to see the opportunity that's on your team versus another? In all these cases, your ability to influence is crucial. It's the difference between yes and no, or go and no go. And so this skill of influencing another runs through every aspect of your business, and of course, your life too, in a larger sense. So it's something that we need to think about. We don't think about it too much, perhaps. Yeah, we do lots of things like ninja selling and other things to help us sell better. And certainly those are aspects of influencing. But there's more to it than that. What promotes effective influence? Well, remember, influence happens when one person talks with or otherwise interacts with another human being and moves that human being. There's something about this connection that gets established between those two people that influences the second person on the receiving end, to think differently or do differently, that they wouldn't have if this interaction hadn't happened the way it had. So what is it that contributes to that happening? First, the other person has to know that you have some information or experience or knowledge or something like that that is worth listening to or paying attention to. If they have no sense that there's any value in what you might offer, then they may not pay any attention. And of course, you're not going to influence them. Trust is extremely important. Chirag mentioned it yesterday. Working with the Med-C process starts to build trust. And obviously, there's many things we can do. We could do several sessions talking about trust itself. But trusting that you understand their interests and needs is crucial to their interest in listening to what it is you have to say. Trusting that you are committed to them is another thing. You may understand a lot about their needs, but you may not be committed. You may have been a lawyer for 20 years and you know all about a particular person's situation and needs if they explain it to you, but now you're no longer a lawyer. You run a coffee shop, right? So, you may have an interest and knowledge, but it doesn't mean you're committed to them. As professionals in our sphere, we need to have other people understand that we're committed to them. If they don't get that, we're working against ourselves. And finally, we have to deliver value, but value not defined by us, but defined by them. You maybe heard Chirag talk about perceived value versus actualized value. Perceived value is what we believe we offer of value. Actualized value is what the other person takes advantage of or benefits from. And so when we're talking about providing value to another, it's not just, I think that this would be really good for you. It's they recognize the value in what the idea or the suggestion is. So all these things promote effective influence. If you look at it on the other side, what gets in the way? What derails you from effectively influencing another? Well, obviously the opposite of all those things we just said, but there's a couple more things we could say here. One, accidentally, I'm sure you're not doing this on purpose, accidentally conveying that you don't truly care. If someone says to you, gosh, I have a problem and this is what happened and blah, 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 and it was really difficult, da, da, da. And you say, yep, boy, sure am sorry about that. Well, where should we go to lunch? Right? If you pull the conversation away from that struggle that they've been in the midst of and you just redirect it over to what are we going to have for lunch today, they may get the feeling that you really don't care about what it is that's important to them at that moment in time. Of course, maybe you didn't mean to do that. Maybe you meant to cheer them up by saying, let's go get some lunch. Where should we go? But from their point of view, it may not feel that way. If we happen to do that, especially unconsciously, we're working against ourselves. And that may be the source of why we're not as effective as we would like to be. Secondly, doing something that goes against the other's interests or needs. Did you ever step in and do something in an effort to try to help somebody, but it actually turned out to be worse? Occasionally that happens, and it can happen professionally or personally. Failing to make a true connection. This is where we lose from the beginning if we're trying to make a pitch with somebody. And it may be that we lose a client somewhere along the way. If you never get referrals from anyone that you've ever served in the past, it may be that something went along from the point that they said, yes, there's some interest or value or trust that they have in you that's enough for them to say, yes, I'll work with you. But if they never come back to you again, ever after that for anything, somewhere along the way, they lost that spirit of connection and trust and value. Letting trust and connection lapse. So for so many of us, we handle the deal. We're so happy to serve the client. We say congratulations when it's done, and then the person's out of our mind. We're on to the next deal. And, we talk all the time here about serving those clients after the deal is done. Chirag touched on that a little bit yesterday too. But unfortunately, we're missing a huge opportunity when we let those things lapse. Ultimately, what matters is for you to create a connection, a human connection with the person. This is what's common to all these cases. It doesn't matter what it is. It's about establishing a human connection that the other person values. And the only way that they can value it is if you demonstrate to them on their terms that you have something of value, that you care about them, that you know about them, that you're here to serve them. As long as they have that feeling in their mind, it doesn't even have to be a clear thought. It's just a feeling like, yes, this person's here for me. Then you're going to maintain that ability to influence them. But once they no longer think that you care or that you understand or that you're interested, you lose that. You see, most of us, somebody said on the chat a minute ago, I talk too much. The problem with our approach is we think that selling is about persuasion and performance. We need to say the right things. We need to show everybody how knowledgeable we are. I've been in the market for 25 years. I know exactly what's going on. I check the exchange, the interest rates every two hours, every 2 days, right? I'm like so on top of things. Oh yeah, right? We're talking and talking and talking because we're trying to persuade and perform. Influence doesn't come from persuasion and performance. That's like, yeah, you might get some like a cheap victory, but it doesn't last. What you need to focus on is not performance and persuasion. You need to focus on connection and contribution. Because once they feel that connection, that's when you're in the position to be influential. So a simple, and this is not the principle itself, but a simple way to think about this is to write this down. It's not about persuasion and performance. It's about connection and contribution. If what they experience from you is frequent, consistent connection and contribution, you will always have a place of influenceability. So here's the principle. Write this down on the first line of your 10-line page. People will not be influenced by you unless and until they feel related to by you. This is why politicians go out to the Pacific Northwest and they throw on a flannel shirt and they're walking around in nature in some trees and they're talking about something. And then the same politician 2 days later is in Iowa and they've got jeans and a t-shirt on and they're talking about corn subsidies and how important they are. And then 2 days later, they're in New York and they're walking the streets of New York and they're saying, we need safe streets and we need better schools. They're trying to relate to people in order to influence them. It's as simple as that. People will not vote for a politician that they believe doesn't relate to them. This is why when Hillary Clinton left the White House after spending most of her life in Arkansas, she came to New York and became senator. And the first thing she said was, I may not be a native New Yorker, but I am not new to your concerns. That was her attempt to say, I can relate to what matters to you, even if I'm not a local New Yorker. Now, I don't mean to take this in a political direction. It's simply, examples. But the point here is politicians live and die by influence, obviously. And so do salespeople. But salespeople who focus their effort on persuasion and performance lose in the long run. Our urge to perform, to say all the right things, to prove to people how smart we are and knowledgeable we are and capable we are and how wonderful our capabilities are and all the wonderful tech that Compass has, that's all good stuff. But if you fail along the way to create a connection, you'll fail in your ability to influence because they will not be influenced by you unless they feel related to by you. This is the challenge that we have when so many folks from different types of groupings or demographics try to connect with others. So how do we live this principle in real life? Well, there's a few steps. There's a lot of things we could do, but I've got a couple of examples here, and we'll talk about these in a minute after I share them with you. First thing, know your client and partner, whether it's a client, a potential client, a teammate, a vendor, anybody that you work with that matters to the success of your business. If you seek to influence that person at one time or another, to have them work a deal in a certain way with you, or to collaborate with you, or even just give you the time of day that you need to first know who they are, what they care about, especially with clients, the Med C. What are your motivations? What are your expectations? What are past disappointments you want to avoid? And what are your concerns? Chirag mentioned this yesterday. I'll take it one brief step further. The reason that this is so powerful for people is because it touches their emotional center. Motivations touches their joy, their happiness, their ideal dream state. Expectations doesn't really touch anything. Disappointments touches sadness. And concerns touches worries or fear or anxiety. And remember that as human beings, we connect through how we feel, not just what we think. When we feel something about somebody, we can be influenced by that person. When we know that that person understands our concerns, when we know that they understand our motivations and our dreams, then it's much easier for them to say, yes, I want to go with you. Yeah, it's great that they have access to Compass Tech. And yeah, it's great that they've been doing this for 20 years. But if they don't think that you're really tapping into what really matters to you as a client, your motivations, your concerns, your expectations, they're never going to give you the job. This is the difference between them seeing you as a partner versus being an agent. Chirag touched on that yesterday. You're not aiming to be an agent providing a service. What you should be aiming for is a lifelong partner. Right? You should be somebody that they can collaborate with on any topic well beyond real estate if they feel like it. If a client comes to you someday and asks you something that has nothing to do with real estate, that's one of the best pieces of evidence that they really think highly of how you relate to them. Second, demonstrate that you know the other's interests and needs. You heard when Chirag was talking with Rob yesterday, several times he said, so what I'm hearing is most important to you is, or let me rephrase, or let me feed back what I heard. These kinds of things demonstrate to the other person that you heard them. And when we do sessions later in the year or early next spring on listening, we'll be talking about the importance of paraphrasing and feeding back. Make every interaction a contribution. There's so much junk going out there on Instagram and other social media platforms, stuff that doesn't serve the person that's receiving it. Did you ever get something from somebody that has nothing to do with who you are? Like maybe you're 55 years old and they want to sell you birth control. Or maybe, you live in an apartment and they're sending you a landscaping stuff, right? You're like, hey, why are you wasting my time sending this to me? You're only demonstrating that you're not relating to them. You have no idea what their needs and interests are. So every interaction that you have, whether it's a posting or whatever, should ideally connect or contribute. Best is contribute. Certainly connect is not bad. There's nothing wrong with that. There's nothing wrong with sharing. If you're in a great restaurant and you want to tweet it out to everybody, hey, here's a great new restaurant in town. Yeah, that's not just a connection, it's a contribution. So certainly aim for contribution, but at the very least, it should make a connection. Keep records of others' interests. Yeah, we all do that maybe for birthdays or something, so you can send birthdays, but what about other stuff? When you talk with somebody and they tell you that their son is going to graduate in 5 months from high school, you better put an action step into your business tracker to reach out to them and say, hey, congratulations. If you're not doing that with current clients or past clients who've given you referrals, you're leaving money on the table, folks. And finally, keep up to date. Have some kind of a process for regular connections with people so you can check in with them, understand what's happening in their life today, not what was happening 3 years ago when you sold them the house, so that you can stay relevant to their interests and needs. All of these things can be done by us at one time or another. They don't cost much money to do these things. They don't cost a lot of time, but every one of these contributes to that person still feeling like this person's in my life. This person understands something about my interests and my needs and who I am as a person. And this person is willing and able to help me in some way. That's where the influence will open up. So taking action, I end all of my calls with a simple couple of steps that you can take to implement what we talk about each week. My request to all of you is that you spend 2% of your time focused each month or each week on leading yourself and your team. 2% of your time works out to 1 hour of time a week if you work 50 hours a week. It's not a lot to ask. It can make a huge difference in your business. So being here on Wednesday mornings, I count that as 30 minutes. So these other steps take usually 30 minutes or less. Well, of course, you can devote more time to them. So here's some simple steps that you can take to start living principle 1. First, make a list of the 15 important people, either clients, previous clients, or teammates that you work with on a regular basis and are important to your success. And ask yourself, put a blank spot next to each person's name. This person really values, and just leave a blank line. And if you can't fill that in, that's telling you something. This person's in your life, but you don't understand anything about them. And for those that you're not clear about, schedule time together. And you can ask them what's going on in their life. You know, the Ford model, right? For asking people about family and occupation, those kinds of things, or just use your curiosity and let your curiosity guide you. You should come away from that conversation with some learning for yourself about what's happening in that person's life, or what's an interest of theirs, or something that matters to them. And that's something that you can reconnect with going forward. Once you can establish that connection of whatever it is, whether it's gardening or wine or cigars or travel or whatever it is, there's always something for you to think about. How can I provide value to this person going forward? Maybe you send them an article. Maybe you send them a picture. Maybe you talk with them sometime about something new that you heard about the thing that matters to them. But truly getting to influence, which is the ability for them to think about you. Like, you want to influence people to refer to you, right? Refer people to you. To get there, they need to maintain that connection. And to maintain that connection, you need to be up to date about what matters to them. Okay, let's take this off. We have a couple minutes left. So let me ask you, please put into the chat, how many of you, based on what I just said, found what I said difficult for you to do? Wayne says not difficult. Not difficult, not me. Great. So for some of you, it's not difficult. If it is difficult in any way, yeah, it's about practice. Absolutely. Looks like Michael's saying practicing partially at least. Great. So this is one of those things where you need to have some kind of conscious intention. It's not something you have to work on every minute of every day, but there are opportunities every week for you to truly connect with people around you and do it in an effective and efficient way. What I said before, I see the question there about Med-C. Med-C, motivations, expectations, disappointments you've had in the past that you don't want to repeat again with either an agent or anyone who's been in a service kind of role, and concerns that you might have about, signing up with me now or the process in general. That's Med-C. What I was saying about it was, it's a very, very powerful connector, because human beings fundamentally connect through how we feel, not through what we think. We have this illusion that we connect because someone thinks like me, but really what it is it's about a feeling that we experience with others. This is why, like, war buddies, they go through the war together because they almost died and they were terrified and they were in the foxhole and they barely came out of it alive. Those people are still getting together 30, 40, 50, 60 years later. Or we feel joy and happiness with someone, right? And that's part of what being in love is all about, is those moments of joy and happiness, those moments of sadness and even anger that we have with the person we love. But there's something about that deep connection that builds over 20 or 30 or 40 years with someone, built through the experience of all those emotional times. And so the Med-C is powerful because it touches on our emotional centers. Motivations touches on what makes us happy. If you had a conversation with somebody about what makes them happy, and like their eyes kind of like go off in the distance and they're talking about their favorite place in the world or their favorite activity in the world, and you're there to share it with them, that's a connecting experience for them. Disappointments is about sadness. What is it that I'm sad about a previous experience that I had with an agent or someone else who served me once, a financial advisor or something like that? And if they're relating that story to you and they're in their sadness when they're relating to you, and they know you're there, they know you're listening, they know you're connected to what they're talking about, not just listening to the words, but understanding the feeling of the difficulty. That's a connecting experience. And finally, concerns. Concerns is about fear. Fear is a powerful motivator. And when someone's willing to share something that they're uncomfortable about or something that they're fearful about, and they know that you're there connecting to them at that moment, that's a powerful experience. And that's why, done well, the Med-C can be all you need. You don't even have to go into like showing all these great pictures on your iPad and talking all about compasses, great tools and stuff like that. If you establish that connection with someone, they will say yes. I've used these techniques. I can tell you and instantly, I've got $37,000 out of income out of one particular client simply by doing this for 30 minutes. And that happened for me when I was coaching some people in different industries, and some lady got my name. She was the head HR firm for a real estate investment trust. And she was head of HR for them. And she didn't know me. I didn't know her, but she got my name from somebody. And she came in and she said, hey, I've got an issue here and I'm thinking of hiring a coach and I'd like to know how you would handle the situation. So I said, fine, tell me about the situation. So she started talking and I started asking questions and I could see where her concerns were, that this person wasn't doing well and it was affecting the other people on the team and it might affect the effectiveness of the team's success and blah, blah, blah. So I stayed in a connected conversation with her for about 25 minutes. I never told her what I was going to do. I never said, here's my prescription for your problem. I never talked about my background, my capabilities, none of that, nothing. I simply, through asking a lot of questions and exploring those particular issues for her and simply being in that space with her, she said at the end of 25 minutes, she said, hey, you know what? I think that you're the right person for this role. I'd like to hire you. Can you accept $20,000 for this assignment? I said, sure, sounds great. 2 days later, she calls me up and she says, I got another problem. Can you come in and listen to this one? I want to know how you would handle this one. I said, fine. So I went in there, had another 15-minute conversation, same thing, another highly connected experience where she got the feeling that I understood her, that I cared about her, that I could relate to her particular situation. And without saying anything, without having to perform, without having to persuade, at the end of that 15 minutes, she said, yeah, I'll give you $17,000 for this one. I said, thank you very much. 45 minutes of connected communication yielded $37,000. Now, there's many other cases like that, but this is the power that we all have. Yes, showing empathy, showing compassion, all those things are part of connection. The point here to say is, don't rest on your laurels. Don't say, hey, I'm so successful. I made all this money. I did all this in GCI last year. Think about the opportunities you missed. The opportunities you missed to connect with another person in which they feel a powerful experience of being connected to. If you can master that, you'll never lose another pitch again. You'll also attract the very best people to your team. You'll have the best deals with the best vendors in your area. You'll have a great relationship with folks at Compass on your terms. Right? This is about having a relationship on your terms through understanding and recognizing how you can serve the other person's perspectives and needs. So we're out of time. Thank you, everybody, very much. Please put this down on your list for the first one. And then as we get to the second or third call from now, the other ones will come up. Certainly look on the platform. If you just want to tune into the 10 principles, you can do that. Otherwise, would love to see you here every week at this time. So go out there, everybody, make the contribution that only you can uniquely make to the world. And I'll see you here next Wednesday. Have a great day.